Last year, Father's Day started out as usual. I always woke up first, I never got a good night's sleep, so I knew it would be quite a while before my 18-year-old wife and my 18 and 17-year-old girls would wake up and join me. Every year, for Mother's Day, I made my wife a nice breakfast of mimosas. For lunch, I would make her a cheese plate with cheese, fruit and nuts, and a bottle of good white wine. For dinner, I would make her favorite grilled steak and baked potatoes paired with a good Cabernet Sauvignon wine. When the girls were younger, they helped with breakfast and the obligatory waiting on Mom. But as they got older, I was left alone with the pampering. It wasn't a big problem. My wife usually reciprocated by making a special breakfast for Father's Day, although I grilled steaks for dinner. So, last year on Father's Day, I waited for my wife to wake up to make me breakfast, which never happened on any other day of the year. She doesn't know it, but I usually eat something small when I wake up around 6. I'll starve to death if I don't eat until she wakes up around 9, which is early for her on the weekend. When she woke up, she kissed me, wished me Happy Father's Day, and started making a special breakfast for the family. For lunch, we went to a kitschy little cafe with Doctor Who-themed sandwiches, and overall, it was a good day. My wife is a slave to the calendar and knows when all the important dates fall. She marks everything from holidays to activities with the kids on a dry erase calendar that hangs on the side of the cabinet in the kitchen. All holidays, milestones, school events, half days, etc. are written on the calendar. Nothing is ever missed. Except when I miss something, of course. The following year, when my wife was putting the dates on the calendar at the end of May, she said, "Hey Bill, this year your birthday falls on Father's Day." It wasn't the first time this had happened, so I wasn't surprised. I replied, "Great. Don't save money and trick me into not getting 2 presents." Kathy replied with a laugh, "You won't survive if you get cheated out of a gift. I'm going to have to do something special for you this year." Next chapter. The weeks leading up to my big day passed strangely in our home. My wife was acting strange, working late, snapping at me and the girls over little things, and getting dressed for work more often. She worked as the bakery manager at our local grocery store. She had never worn makeup before, but around this time she started doing it. She also wore a scarf over her clothes, which consisted of a white button-down shirt and pants. I started to have my doubts when on the Friday before my birthday she went out without me. We went out quite often with the main group of married couples, so she rarely went out with the girls alone. If someone was going out for drinks and invited her along, she'd let me know the place and I'd meet her. It wasn't like I was an ogre and wouldn't let her do anything alone. She always said she enjoyed her time more if I was with her. It made me feel good, and I thought our marriage was pretty strong because of little things like that. For my part, I didn't do much without her outside of our social circle either. That was fine with us. We weren't party people or big drinkers. Our idea of a nice Friday night was just about lounging on the couch together and watching a couple of movies. That's why I was surprised to see her coming down the stairs that Friday, fully dressed. I whistled at her and asked, "Damn, honey, did I forget we're going out? Let me get dressed quickly." "No, Bill. I'm going with a few people from work. I thought you might want to order a pizza for yourself since our girls are going out too." I was shocked. She'd never mentioned it, and it wasn't on her precious calendar. "Huh? You didn't tell me you had plans. I thought we were going to finish our shows tonight." A look of fear appeared on her beautiful face, but then she mastered herself and softened. "I'm sorry, baby. I was just asked today." I let her know I was looking at her upside down and said, "So you just found out today, and in the hour you were at work before me, you bought a new skirt, went tanning, and got your hair done." I was starting to get angry. She was lying to me, but I couldn't prove it. I couldn't believe she could cheat on me. It was out of character for her. She was the epitome of a suburban soccer mom's wife and mother. Our life was perfect. She had no reason to cheat on me. She would tell me, "I worked half a day today. I wanted to look good for a change." Before I could say anything in response, she walked out the door without a word, leaving me wondering what the hell had happened. I waited for her, and she came home just before midnight. Her hair was no longer lying down, but was gathered into a regular ponytail. So much for the hairstyle. She walked past me without saying a word and went upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard the shower running. I just shook my head, wondering what she had done that she had to shower before bed. She didn't come downstairs and say goodnight to me before going to bed. I realized something was wrong in my perfect world and wondered how wrong. I work in the retail industry, so I was at work on Saturday morning. Usually, as I was getting ready for work, I would wake her up and she would kiss me goodbye before going back to bed. That morning, I got nothing. Once again, I was shocked. When I arrived at the store, I saw Missy waiting for me at the front door. Missy was the morning barista at our big store's coffee shop. She was a pretty red-haired girl whose blue eyes were striking. As happily married as I was, I couldn't help but take notice of her. I'd always liked redheads. "Hey, Bill," she called out as I approached the entrance. It was still locked since it was a half hour before the store opened. The guys from the night crew could let her in, but as she'd told me once before, she wasn't comfortable alone in a store with a bunch of guys. "Good morning, Missy," I said as I opened the doors in front of us. "What's wrong, Bill? You look like someone killed your cat." "Sorry, I've got a lot on my mind today." She threw me a strange look but remained silent. "Give me a few minutes and I'll pour you a cup of our best." I smiled forcedly and said, "Sounds good. See you soon." I closed the doors as she hurried to get the cafe ready for the morning rush. I knew she would be very busy after the store opened. Our little cafe was always crowded in the mornings. As I walked the floor, I would check on the work crews getting their departments ready. I always did an audit in the morning. It wasn't necessary as I had a very good team of department managers, but it gave me a chance to say hello and make small talk. I felt it was important to maintain a good relationship with my team members, and I think they appreciated my efforts. The last stop on my walk was the coffee shop where Missy was waiting for me with a large black coffee. "Here you go, boss. 1 cup of the best kind from the Mega Mart." "Thanks, Missy." I put $2 on the counter. "No, Bill. It's on the house tonight." "No way, Missy. I pay for everything here. The last thing I need is for someone to get mad at me and call corporate to report me." She sighed. "Bill, I would never—" "I didn't mean you, Missy. I can't take that risk, even for a $2 coffee. You'd be surprised at the things I have to put up with if I deny someone a day off or cut overtime. It's just not reasonable." "Okay, boss. Fair enough." I waved goodbye and sipped my beer. I'm sure some employees get free coffee from time to time. There's no way to track it, and who needs to? Too much work over cheap coffee. I can't imagine spending hours watching videos to make sure everyone paid. It was different for me. Being in charge of a company is also a risk. Employees lost their temper over the silliest things. I was approached by HR because I was enforcing parking regulations. Seriously, calling HR because you have to park in your backyard. Ridiculous. The day ended and went pretty smoothly. The thing that excited me the most was the old lady who stole the cat food and bird food. It was exactly the kind of day I needed. I was busy enough not to ruminate on my new problems with my wife, but not so busy that I didn't have time to do all the chores. When I walked through the door of the house, my wife and daughters were already coming out of there. I was surprised for a moment but looked at the calendar. "Bye, Daddy," each of my daughters said as they kissed me on the cheek goodbye. My loving wife said nothing. They were going to a concert with other moms and daughters. It had been planned a long time ago and was on the calendar, but I had forgotten, as usual. I was hoping I would have a chance to talk to Kathy and find out what was going on. I hated not knowing what she had been up to the night before. After not thinking about it all day, there was nothing left for me to do but ponder it in the evening. I took the opportunity to poke around a bit. I checked her email but figured it was down, and it was. No one else had sent any emails. She had her phone, so I couldn't check messages or call logs. I went over to the laundry basket to check her clothes from the evening, but since it was Saturday, she had already done her laundry. I didn't have time to do anything, and after watching a movie, I went to bed feeling no better than before. Waking up on my birthday/Father's Day, I started the day as usual. I ate a couple slices of toast, drank my coffee, and sat on the patio to enjoy the morning. The day was gorgeous. I enjoyed the birds chirping and contemplated what this special day had in store for me. Around 9, I walked into the house to refill my coffee and was surprised to see that my wife and daughters were already up and packing lunch. "What's going on?" I asked, perplexed as to why they hadn't made me get ready to hit the road. My daughter Jill replied, "We're going to the beach." "Oh," I said and went upstairs to get dressed for the lake. As I was putting on my shirt, I heard my daughter Jenny yell out, "Bye, Daddy," See you later. I'd have it. The door slammed shut and I looked out the window to see my wife and daughters leaving. I couldn't believe it. I didn't expect the girls to remember my birthday. I had to remind them of their mother's birthday and Mother's Day, but I couldn't understand why Katie didn't remember. I was coming down the stairs and heard my cell phone ring. I rushed over there, hoping they had figured it out and were going to tell me they were coming back for me, but no. It was my mom. Hi, Billy. Happy birthday and Father's Day. Thanks, Mom. Does Kathy have big plans for you guys today? No. She took the girls to the beach a few minutes ago. Really? That's not like her. I'd bet she'll make you a nice breakfast and make this day special for you. Yeah, I honestly don't know what's going on right now. She's been acting weird for weeks now. Well, don't fuss. She probably has something special planned for later. I've got to get to church. Love you, Billy. Love you, Mom. My mom was to be loved. She was an eternal optimist and loved Kathy, as if she were her own flesh and blood. She and Kathy had visited each other regularly since my father had died a few years ago. Kathy wanted to make sure my mom wasn't too lonely. I was standing there wondering what the hell was going on with my marriage when the phone rang again. It was my assistant, Anne. Bill, we had an incident at the coffee shop this morning. What happened? Snip. Missy was on the stairs when she was pushed by a customer. She lost her balance and fell. Oh my God, is she okay? They took her to St. Alex's Hospital to have her x-rayed. She probably has a broken arm or something. Shit, poor girl. Have you been switched? Yeah, I'm all set. I just didn't want you to catch me off guard tomorrow. I'm sorry I bothered you on Father's Day. Don't worry about it, Anne. Thanks for calling. I hoped Missy would be okay. I fiddled around the house for a while and, figuring they wouldn't be back, headed to IHOP for breakfast. This turned out to be a mistake for my state of mind. I had to wait a long time, and everywhere I looked, there were families everywhere. Happy families honoring fathers and grandfathers. I left before I started crying. I made my way through McDonald's and had a hearty breakfast of coffee and orange juice. The pancakes were surprisingly good. I sat in the park and ate with a plastic fork and knife. I looked out at the little lake I used to take my girls on rides around when they were little. They loved the water. Whether it was swimming, boating, or even fishing, they loved being at the lake. As they got older and almost went to college, they lost interest in fishing, and looking back, I think they lost interest in spending time with me at all. In those days, all their outings were with their mother. It was probably the right thing to do. Shopping for clothes with their father, I'm sure, would have been burdensome for a young girl. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, there was no word from my wife. I could only assume there would be no lunch together. I drove to the Doctor Who cafe and ordered a Reuben. Surely the name had something to do with the TV series Reuben's Dalek Revolution or something equally silly. Being a 40-year-old man who has no idea what's cool and what's not, I took a picture and registered on Facebook. I got the usual likes and comments wishing me a happy Father's Day from my friends and acquaintances. Oddly, my mother-in-law commented that she thought it looked like I was on the beach with my wife and girls. Apparently, my wife had been posting beach pictures on her Facebook page. I finished my sandwich and headed to a sports bar near the house. I hadn't watched a game in a while and decided to drown my sorrows in Miller Lite. The bar was crowded and I wasn't in the mood, so I headed to the cigar lounge next door and treated myself to a $60 Opus X. Wish me a happy birthday. I sat down at a table and turned on the Sox game, and a couple of guys playing cards invited me to join them. I'm Bill, I said, introducing myself to the older gentleman. I'm Lance, and this is my brother Jerry. Nice to meet you both. And then they finished dealing and invited me into their little 5-card game. Help yourself, Bill, Lance said, setting the cooler on the floor. I thanked him and pulled out a Miller Lite. No kids? Or did the ex have them with a new man? Jerry asked with a smirk. I frowned and replied, my wife and girls are at the beach right now. They don't seem to know what day it is. Sucks, Lance added. I don't see my boys much. Both are serving. Jerry nodded and said, my baby girl lives in California. My grandson Charlie just turned 2. I'm going there next week. That's great, I said. When my girls turned 17 and 18, I was starting to miss the little ones running around. They both nodded understandingly. After some time of small talk, we somehow got back to the subject of my wife. Do you think she's really oblivious or is she avoiding you on purpose? Jerry asked. asked Jerry. Asked Jerry, asked Jerry, asked Jerry, asked Jerry, asked Jerry. It was a great question that I pondered as well. I told them about the past few weeks, up to and including Friday's problems, and they shook their heads. She's cheating on you, Lance said. Jerry nodded in agreement. I can't believe it, I said. But as soon as he said it, I realized it was the only explanation that made sense and tried to believe it wasn't true. Listen, Bill, Lance said. I've been through this before. The changes in behavior, the sudden nighttime trips in slut clothes, the disrespect. I've been there and done that, buddy. My wife had fun with a coworker a couple times, and when I found out about it, I divorced her. Biggest mistake of my life. What? I snapped back. She cheated on you. How can divorcing her be a mistake? In my opinion, there was no excuse for it. Cheating is the end of a marriage. Plain and simple. Period. End of story. Bill, I was broke for 5 years paying her alimony and child support. I missed her every damn day, loved her across town in my lonely apartment while she was lonely in my house. She may have cheated on me, but I was too big of a wuss to forgive her at the time. It's been 7 years, but we got back together when I pulled my head out of my ass. We're happy now. Jesus, I said. Giving her body to another man is the biggest insult and disrespect my wife could ever commit. If what you say is true and she's having an affair, she's either so infatuated with her lover that she's forgotten my birthday or she's blowing me off on purpose. Either of those options is unacceptable. Lance shook his head. Bill, trust me. If you really love her, find a way to forgive her. You'll be better off in the long run. 40-year-old guys don't get second chances at love. Thank you, Lance. You've given me a lot of food for thought. I might have said that, but what I was really thinking about was how crazy he was. There was no way I could forgive her for cheating on me and no way I could stay married to her. I shook hands with both men, wished them well, and left. As I sat on the couch and browsed Facebook, it was almost dinner time. I saw my daughter's and wife's posts with pictures of their happy day and was saddened even more. Screw it, I thought to myself. I need to pull myself together and stop acting like a lost child. My wife forgot my birthday. It happens. She forgot Father's Day. What's the difference? What mattered was that I was sure she had cheated on me on Friday night and had probably acted strangely many times in the previous weeks. And the fact that she was flaunting it in public must have been her ultimate goal. Well, she was well over it. It was time to prepare for the rest of my life. I decided to go out to dinner at my favorite restaurant. I knew it would be a long wait, and that was okay. I didn't have anything else to do. So I showered, got dressed in my sport coat and pants, and headed out to get a steak. I was sitting at the bar at the steakhouse waiting for a table when an older man sat down in the empty seat next to me. He saw my bottle of champagne with one glass and frowned. Thankfully, he didn't say anything and just ordered a martini. When the bartender filled my glass, the man apparently couldn't help himself and asked, "Are you celebrating alone, or am I taking someone else's place?" "No," I replied. "That's okay. I'm here alone." He nodded and took a sip. He must have been in sales because he couldn't sit still. He said, "Yeah, I'm waiting for my 3 generations of Red Fury. My wife is helping my daughter who broke her arm today. Apparently, she doesn't take well to having to do everything with her left hand." He laughed and continued, "You just don't expect your grown children to break bones. I thought those times were behind us." I agreed with his opinion and nodded. "Looks like I'll be cooking on my own for a few weeks. My wife will have to take care of Missy and Mia and leave me alone." I looked up. "What did you say?" Before he could answer, a little girl shrilled, "Grandpa!" from across the room and darted across the crowded bar. A little ball of red curls jumped into his lap and showered the man with hugs and kisses. A moment later, I heard, "Bill?" I turned around and saw Missy, and what I realized was her mother standing next to me. Her mother was a complete replica of her. Except for a few wrinkles around her eyes, they looked exactly alike. "Hi, Missy. How's your arm?" "It's fine. I'm on strong painkillers, so I can hardly feel anything. But it hurt like hell when they were setting it right." Missy introduced me to her parents, Jack and Mary, and then her adorable little girl, Mia. "Where's your wife, Bill?" she asked. "I don't know. She took my girls to the beach this morning, and I haven't heard from them all day." "Really? On Father's Day?" "Worse, it's also my birthday today." "My God, she blew you off on the best day of the year for you. What's her problem?" I didn't want to get into this and say any more than I probably already had to, so I shrugged. Well, forget about her. You should join us, Mary said firmly. I realized what Jack meant about the red rage. I don't forget about it, Bill. You don't want them to militate against you. It's not nice, Jack said with a chuckle that indicated his years of experience militating against them. But it's your day, Jack. I don't want to get involved. Bullshit, he said. It's our day. Grandpa, you said, I know, Pumpkin. I said a bad word. Grandma's going to punish me later. Daddy? He winked at me as their table's buzzer sounded. Pay up, Bill, and meet me at our table. No payment, he said in the tone of a drill instructor. He tossed a 20 on the counter and walked away. I'm sorry, Bill. My parents can be dumb-headed. Don't worry, Missy. I suppose it's better than eating alone. Conversation over dinner was light. Bill and I told stories about our daughters growing up, and Mia asked lots of questions. She kept giggling over embarrassing stories about her mom as a child. After dinner, my phone rang. Seeing that it was my wife, I ignored the call and put the phone on the table. Your wife? Mary asked. Yes. It's more than you realize, isn't it? Missy asked. I think so, but I have no proof. Bill, everyone makes mistakes, said Mary, looking directly at Jack. Maybe you can find a way to forgive her. Missy lifted her head and stared at Mary. I beckoned to the waiter and handed him my credit card. Well, I've destroyed enough of your meeting. Thank you for inviting me to share a meal with you. Bill, let me... No, Jack. It was an honor to dine with you and especially one of my favorite employees. It's on me. Happy Father's Day. I shook their hands and walked over to the waiter's counter to sign the check. I didn't even have hard evidence that she was cheating on me, but I was already 2 by 2 sure I should forgive her. What is it with people? My phone rang over and over, but I paid no attention to it. I pulled into my garage and was greeted by 2 wiggly dervishes showering me with kisses and hugs, apologizing for abandoning me on Father's Day. Girls, don't worry about it. I don't expect you to remember when it's my birthday. It's your birthday today? Jill shouted. She ran into the house yelling at my wife. Daddy, we didn't know. I'm so sorry, she sobbed, snuggling against my chest. You must hate us. No, baby. I love you more than life. When she suggested last night that we go to the beach today, we jumped at the opportunity. We didn't think, baby, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm not mad at you. I didn't tell her I was mad at her mother, but that was my problem, not my daughter's. Let's go inside. I walked through the kitchen, ignoring the crying wife my daughters were berating, and went upstairs to change. Putting on shorts and a tank top, I returned to the war zone and found my wife sobbing alone. I'm so sorry, she mumbled. I shook my head and went out on deck with a beer and a cigar. It was a beautiful night and I was enjoying the quiet, thinking about work rather than my wife when the sliding door opened. Bill, What's his name? I asked, interrupting her. Evan. I didn't look at her, and she didn't step further back walking onto the deck. Bill, what's his name? The man you were having fun with on Friday? My anger was building. I heard the door close, but she didn't come out. She didn't deny it. That's when I realized I was about to go to a divorce lawyer. Almost 20 years of marriage gone. What a stupid woman I had married. That's when I started to think the worst. How long had she been cheating? Was he her first? Did I know him? Were these girls even mine? It's amazing what negative thoughts come to mind when you've been treated so badly. I decided to demand a paternity test on the girls as part of the divorce. It would not only be for my peace of mind, but also for Katie's embarrassment. I spent the rest of the night researching divorce laws online and then fell asleep on the couch. That's how I spent my birthday. Next chapter. I woke up at a dismal 5 o'clock in the morning. In my bedroom, I found Katie sleeping soundly, curled around my pillow. It was funny how peaceful she looked compared to how poorly I had slept. I grabbed what I needed and took a quick shower. I managed to escape without waking her, but Jill was waiting for me in the hallway. How bad is it, Daddy? I sighed. As bad as it could ever be. Can you forgive her? After all, she just forgot one day. So, honey, she didn't just forget my birthday or Father's Day. She cheated on me. She sighed. No, Daddy, she wouldn't. She had to, and I won't accept that. Think about it. The last few weeks she'd been acting strange. Friday night, after getting a tan and getting her hair done, She went out dressed like a whore. That's definitely not for me. She shook her head. Babe, she avoided me all day Saturday and Sunday. She obviously had either guilt or hatred for me, and she didn't want to be around me at all. When else did she take you to the beach without me? It's always a family excursion. What if it wasn't an affair? What if it was just a one-time infatuation? Can't you forgive her for one time? I doubt it, honey. But look at all the things she's done. For once this weekend, did she act like she loved me? Daddy, you didn't see her face when Grandma called her and asked her why she didn't call Grandpa to wish him Happy Father's Day. She dropped the phone and yelled, "No!" So loud, we thought Grandpa was having a heart attack or something. He's... he's fine, Dad. Mom was sobbing on her knees until we lifted her up and sat her on the couch. She kept saying she loved you over and over. Honestly, Jenny wanted to call an ambulance for her. She thought she was going to have a breakdown. We calmed her down and managed to get her to call you. Jill, I don't know what you want me to say. She doesn't love me. You can't cheat on your spouse and love your spouse. That's not love, that's selfishness. Love should be selfless. When she got involved with another man, she discarded me. She hugged me and cried. I'm going to assume it wasn't some random guy she picked up at a bar. She must have flirted or accepted his flirting with her. There should have been touching, and all of this preceded the first sex with him. All of these actions are a betrayal to your spouse. You can't be in love with someone and show affection for someone else. Please don't divorce her. I have to go to work. I'll talk to you later. She walked into Jenny's room. I'll be sure to tell her about what we talked about. There would be no more secrets in our family. I wondered how much longer we would be a family. I knew Kathy would be too busy at work to try to call or text me, so I spent most of the day alone. The only thing that made the day not quite normal was filling out corporate forms related to Missy's accident. She was due for vacation compensation, and I hoped she wouldn't be too worried. I didn't know anything about her personal life except that she wasn't married. She came in to sign forms and fill out an accident report. I wrote it for her since she has poor left-handedness, and she signed it. How are things at home? She asked. Not so good. She didn't deny it when I told her about her affair. Shit, Bill, I'm sorry. I'm sure you don't want to know my life story, but I understand how you feel. My ex-husband cheated on me while I was pregnant. I kicked him out before my daughter was born. My mom was furious. She basically called me a throwaway. Jesus, I thought it was odd that your mom mentioned forgiving my wife last night. She was looking right at your dad when she said it. Yeah, I noticed that too. I'm not sure which one, but it makes me think one of them cheated. I'm sorry. Don't be. They seem happy, so they're free to live their lives the way they want. On the other hand, I prefer never to trust cheaters. Neither do I said firmly. Next chapter. Katie wasn't home when I got home from work. She was probably having fun with her stud, and I was pissed. I got back in my car and drove the 2 miles to her grocery store. I saw her car in the parking lot, and to my surprise, I saw her sitting in it with a young man. When I stopped in front of her car, she noticed me and I saw her yell out, "No!" She opened the door, but I drove away. If she was going to cheat on me, he could have her. I'd had enough. I drove home and ran upstairs to pack a bag. I planned to stay in a hotel until I found an apartment. Before I knew it, Jenny and Jill were already crying and begging me to stay. I'm sorry, girls, but your mom was just about to cheat on me when I caught her. She was in the car with some guy when I pulled up next to her. Daddy, this has to be a mistake. Girls, I know what I saw. She had a man in her car. Why would she stay after work and have a man in her car if she wasn't going to take him anywhere? She can't say they were just having lunch. There is no innocent explanation for her sitting in the back parking lot after work with a man in the car. Daddy, please don't break up our family, Jenny sobbed. Honey, your mother broke up our family. It's not my fault. I hugged them and kissed their cheeks. I love you, girls. I'll talk to you every day. I left them crying in the bedroom and went to the garage myself. As I was driving out of the garage, I was almost hit by Katie coming at me like a bat out of the underworld. I shook my head and drove on. The next week was nothing short of pure hell. I refused to take my wife's calls, and for the first 3 days she called me every hour without a break. She must have taken a week's vacation because she couldn't call from the shop and had to be at the construction site all day. She left countless messages begging me to call her. I deleted every one of them. After those 3 days, my mother, mother-in-law, both daughters, and Kathy's sister begged me to talk to her. They all said it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, but every time I asked them if she had cheated on me, they wouldn't answer. They all knew she had. They just didn't want to admit it. I stopped answering my phone calls. I told my daughters I would talk to them, but their mother was not to be talked about. I had to hang up twice before they believed I was serious. At the end of the week, I met with a lawyer. I wanted to split the house in half. She would keep the house until the girls moved out. Then we'd sell it. The lawyer said I could get more than half of the proceeds for the house since my down payment contribution and monthly payment is more than Katie's, but I told him to just split everything equally. I thought alimony or maintenance was a foregone conclusion, but it turns out that since my wife makes enough money to support herself on her own, I won't have to pay her anything. That was the best news I've gotten in a while. I wouldn't have to pay her to have fun with her lover. The only catch was that I had no proof of her cheating. The judge might not allow it and reduce it to irreconcilable differences, and I would have to prove that we were trying to have a relationship. I decided to take my chances. With my attorney preparing to file for divorce, life went on. There was no forced mediation or counseling. There would be no lawsuits for alienation of affection. There would be no drawn-out fight. The split was fair, and any judge could see that even blindfolded. However, it wasn't that simple. What she could do was fight. When she was served with the papers, she unleashed the whole family barrage on me again. It turned out she had only had fun with the guy once, that Friday before my birthday, or convinced everyone of it. I was labeled the bad guy because I wouldn't let her explain everything, as if any explanation would have been acceptable. My mother basically called me a wuss because I wouldn't fight for my marriage. My mother-in-law told me we were even because I too had broken my vows by not staying with her during the most difficult times. My daughters told me I had to stay in the family because our divorce would scar them for life. It was unrealistic. I had done nothing wrong, but the divorce was blamed on me. It got to the point where I asked my daughters to submit their saliva for DNA testing. They refused until I lied to them and told them it was a court order. Kathy wrote me a letter that was mailed to my store. I read it, and it said she was caught up in the guy's attention to her. I say guy because the bastard was only 21 years old. They only did it once in the backseat of his car, and he was really bad. As if the fact that he was a loser was supposed to make things better. She also told me that when I caught her in the car with the guy, I told him privately to never talk to her again. It didn't matter. She cheated on me once, and that was enough. The best part was that because she gave me the letter, I didn't have to prove the cheating in the divorce. She did it on her own. That meant I didn't have to file an irreconcilable differences claim and prove that we were trying to work things out. Karma was finally on my side. She tried to resist the divorce, but when the judge saw the terms I proposed in her letter confirming infidelity, he approved it. I was to be divorced in 60 days, and so I found myself alone on an island of desolation. I was labeled immature and a jerk for refusing to talk to her. It got to the point where my mother and my daughters stopped talking to me. It hurt, but I was on the side of righteousness, and if they didn't like it, well, too bad. I called my daughters every other day. They didn't answer, but I would leave voicemails telling them what was going on with me and asking them what was going on in their lives. I didn't let them blame me for my lack of communication. I continued to make every effort and get in touch with them whether they wanted me to or not. One thing that changed was that I started having coffee with Missy on Sundays. It started innocently enough when we ran into each other at a local coffee shop. Saying that she and Mia lived in the neighborhood and were out for a walk. I invited them to join me and told them about my misadventures while Mia watched cartoons on my iPad. "I'm sure your daughters will come around, Bill," she said. "They're young, impressionable, and living with your wife. There's no telling what nonsense she's put in their heads." I hope you're right. I just hope they're not too far gone. I miss them like hell. The next week, I walked into the same store at the same time and was reading when I heard, "Hello, stranger." I smiled and invited them to join me again. "Is this normal for you or are you stalking me?" she asked with a smile. 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 "No, I live nearby and I like to have a cup of coffee and read on Sunday mornings. It's kind of lonely at home, so I come here." She sipped from her cup and we chatted about the neighborhood until we parted ways. It wasn't a conscious decision to meet every Sunday, but we did. I enjoyed her company, and little Mia was just adorable. The day the divorce became final, I knocked on the front door of my old house. My wife answered, and it was obvious she was crying. She didn't say a word, just invited me in. Are the girls home? I asked. They're watching the musical at school. I know why you're here. I expected you to come tonight. Really? I asked with a smirk. You waited until it was too late to stop it, didn't you? Yes, I said. I knew you'd beg, plead, try to make up, and I couldn't let that happen. You broke my heart, and there's no way I'm forgiving you. Damn it, Bill, it was one time. One bad mistake. Why couldn't you forgive me? Why couldn't you find a way to stay with me? Didn't you love me as much as I've loved you all these years? I laughed. Did you love me when you were flirting with your asshole? Did you love me when you avoided me all weekend and left me alone on my birthday? If that's your idea of love, you're beyond help. I never wanted this to happen, she sobbed. I never wanted to have a cheating whore as a wife, but here we are. She gasped and started to speak before I interrupted her. Kathy, not only did you break my heart, but you turned my mother and daughters against me. I will never forgive you for that. It's your fault for being unreasonable. I got angry and said, if you don't make my mother and my daughters apologize to me and make things right, I will tell every man you date that you are a cheating whore. I will try to ruin all your relationships in the future because you ruined mine. I don't need anyone else. Wrong answer. I guess I'll have to find other ways to hurt you and embarrass you. I stood up to leave and she grabbed my arm. It's not my fault. You can't blame me. Oh no? Did I cheat on you? I don't think so. You know what's really disgusting? You're letting your daughters grow up believing that cheating on your husband is acceptable. Because of your behavior, they're going to go into adulthood believing that you're a saint and I'm a sinner, and it's okay because it was a one-time thing. So screw it. I'm not going to get upset because some asshole made you feel sexy. I pulled her hand out of mine and said, rot in hell for ruining our marriage. Just rot, slut. I left her crying after me and wasn't the least bit upset. A few weeks later, Missy knocked on my office door. Got a minute, Bill? Sure, come on in. I frowned as she closed the door, expecting something bad to happen now. Bill, does the company have a rule against dating other employees? I hated it when she asked me that. I was hoping I could ask her out. It looked like I was too late. No. We have a strict harassment policy. That policy protects just about anything that could be affected by a failed relationship between coworkers, and if two people can't work together after a breakup, it's their fault, not the company's. Good. That's exactly what I was hoping for, she said, placing a folded piece of paper on my desk. What's this? I asked. My address and phone number. I'm expecting you for dinner tomorrow. Mia will be joining us. I smiled and agreed. Good. You're a good man, Bill. You deserve happiness, and I want to give you a second chance at it. Not that. She popped out of my office with a cute spring in her step, and I looked forward to our dinner. Next chapter. Hey, it's Dad. I hope you and your sister are doing well. It's business as usual in my world, except that one woman from work invited me over for dinner. Anyway, I love you and miss you. Please call me soon. Bye. I knew leaving that message would cause problems, but I didn't care. I needed to move on with my life, and I was glad that Missy had picked herself up. Missy was a beautiful woman with an even more beautiful character. Her daughter was very developed and charming, and I had already met her parents. I felt like I was finally ahead of the curve. Only 15 minutes had passed when Kathy texted me. I can't believe you're already dating. You're a real bastard. I laughed when I read that. I hadn't realized how deluded she was. To think that I would sit there and worry about her was crazy. Maybe some guys would mourn the loss of their marriage to a cheating wife, but that wasn't about me. At 41, I was young enough to find love again. Hell, I was young enough to have more kids if I wanted to. That was something to think about. Missy was already in her 30s. Maybe she'd want to have more kids. I knew it was too early to think about it, but being a single mom, those things were probably high on Missy's list of potential suitors. I'm sure she was looking for a husband, not a toy. The next night I showered and shaved after work and dressed casually. Looking in the mirror, I didn't pay attention to what I saw. I was in good shape, no extra pounds or love handles. I had a full head of brown hair with no peaking gray. I had a great job that paid well and money in the bank. I considered myself a pretty good catch for any woman, let alone a young one like Missy. Then I realized I had no idea how to date. When you're married, you're always together and know everything about each other. There is no problem holding hands or kissing. When you came home after a night out, you knew that entertainment was just around the corner. The status quo was comfortable. Jesus, I had to relearn this. I knew my wife well and only her. I could only hope that the next woman I did this with enjoyed the same thing, or at least had a good relationship with her. I was afraid I wasn't ready to date yet and regretted entering the dating scene so quickly. Next chapter. I knocked on the door of her house with a bottle of wine, flowers, and a stuffed animal. I figured it couldn't hurt to win Mia's favor. When she opened the door, I was shocked at what I saw. Her curly red hair was loose around her shoulders and she was wearing the perfect amount of makeup. She laughed and asked, "Did I pass the test?" "God, yes," I said without waiting for an answer. "No." She laughed even harder and took the flowers and wine from me. "Mia's watching TV. Go tell her hello. She'll love the bear." She left for the kitchen and I knelt down next to Mia. "Hi, sweetie. I brought you a bear cub." She looked at me apprehensively and then lit up the room with her smile. She held out her hands for the bear cub and ran to show it to Missy as soon as she picked it up. And it brought back fond memories of Jenny and Jill at the same age. I realized how long it had been since I had talked to them and missed them even more. "What's wrong?" Missy asked, tearing me away from my musings. I smiled forcedly and replied, "Nothing. I was just thinking about my daughters when they were Mia's age." "Is it really that bad now?" she asked. "They still won't talk to me. Katie has turned them against me, and I can't change their minds. But I'm trying anyway. I leave them messages every day, and I'm not going to stop." "I'm so sorry, Bill. I know this is terrible for you." "Every day. I know they listen to my messages. I told them about our date tonight, and Kathy texted me that I was an asshole for getting to the point so quickly." "I'm sorry, but that's not too fast, is it?" She bit her lip and looked cute as hell. "Maybe," I answered honestly, "but I'll be happy to find out with you." She smiled and took my hand. "Dinner's ready. I hope you like pasta with meat sauce." "That sounds wonderful. I also have garlic bread, so be prepared for us to make out on the couch afterward." Mia giggled, and I stood there shocked that Missy was being so brazen. She saw my awkwardness and said, "Bill, we're both adults and I've known you for 3 years. I know what kind of person you are and it doesn't take me long to get to know you better. I really like you. You're going to be a hot commodity soon, and I want to make myself known early." "A hot commodity?" I interjected. "Yep. You have no idea how much hype the news of your divorce has caused in the store. Honey, your appearance in the market, so to speak, has caught the attention of many unmarried ladies. You're a handsome man in good shape, you're smart, stable, and we all know how you feel about fidelity." I was feeling pretty good about myself as I sat down at her table. "So I'll get in line early," she finished. I took her hand and squeezed it. "I like you too." Mia, not wanting to be left out, said, "Sketty is my favorite." "I like Sketty too. The fatter the better," I said. Seeing a jar of Parmesan cheese on the table, I added, "You also have to have stinky cheese." She giggled and said, "It's not stinky cheese, it's parm. Stinky cheese," I said, bringing the jar up to my nose and imagining it was the worst smell in the world. "Wow, that's really stinky cheese." Missy shook her head as I handed the jar to Mia. She sniffed it, shrugged, and poured a generous portion over the spaghetti. Over dinner, we kept the conversation light. I asked about Mia's preschool class and her friends. She effortlessly gave me all the details she could remember. I enjoyed the conversation. After a while, I noticed that Missy had fallen silent. She smiled broadly and just watched her daughter and I exchange a few phrases. Eventually, she started to gather the plates and I said, "Let me help." "Oh no, she hasn't told you about her favorite TV shows yet." She laughed as Mia started telling me about all the best children's shows. After putting Mia to bed, Missy came back and sat next to me on the couch. I handed her a glass of wine and she sighed contentedly as she put her feet up on the poofy. "I love being a mom, but sometimes it's the best part of the day for me." Instinctively, I wrapped my arms around her. When she snuggled up against me, I said, "It's even worse with two." "I'm sure it is. Do you think your girls will come around?" "I hope so," I replied thoughtfully. "I'm doing the best I can right now, but it's still raw for them." She turned and kissed my cheek. You're a great father. Just don't give up fighting for them. She set her glass aside and leaned back in her chair. Bill, I've told you before that I really like you, and I'm too old to play the will we or won't we game. I'd like to keep seeing you, and that includes inviting you into my bedroom. I was about to tell her we didn't have to do that, but she held up a finger to silence me. I know you want to be a gentleman and all, but you don't have to. What I'm trying to say is that I don't want to be your buddy or friend with privileges. I'm warning you that I want an exclusive relationship. I have a daughter to think about, and frankly, she needs a daddy just as much as I need a husband. I tried to speak again, but was rebuffed again. Usually conversations like this end with the guy picking up the phone and running away. I don't think you're like that, but I'm giving you a way out. If you want to sow your oats and enjoy the single life, I'm not your girl. If, however, you want to see if we have a chance at a long life, I'm your woman. Wow, I said. Did you have that speech prepared or did you just give it at random? She frowned, misinterpreting my feelings. Missy, as you said, we've known each other in a working relationship for 3 years. We've been having coffee together for the past few weeks, and it's been a pleasure. I'm a family man, and that's all I've ever been. I don't know how to be single, and the thought of dating scares the hell out of me. If my wife could keep her legs shut, I'd still be a happily married family man. No, I don't want to play on that field. She smiled and took my hand. I continued. You're beautiful, smart, and you make great spaghetti. She laughed and patted my shoulder playfully. I'd like to be your boyfriend. Consider me part of creating something good for all of us, including your little girl. We didn't make love that night. As much as I wanted to take her right there on the couch, I decided it wasn't worth rushing things. She had practically confessed her love to me and was very turned on, so I decided it was best for my comfort to take my time. I received a gift from the gods when I was sent an application for a management position. I never found out the name of the brat who ruined my marriage and couldn't get back at him, but when he showed up for the interview for the night manager position, I recognized him immediately. I knew he would never recognize me, but he might have recognized my name, so I asked Ann to interview him and hire him on the spot. Then, on the second night of his job, I was waiting in the parking lot for him to start his shift. I walked over to his 90s car and put a 40-inch TV in the back seat that I had bought from a competitor. We sold the same model, and I happened to know that one had been accidentally lost in the warehouse. In the morning, I timed my appearance to coincide with the end of his shift. I walked him to his car, chatting on the way about what he thought of his crew of guys. As we pulled up to the car, I noticed the TV in the back seat and pretended to be shocked. Jeff, you bought a TV before your shift? We're not open yet. No, Bill, it's not mine. I don't know how it got there. Jeff, I think we should go back to the store. Bill, you have to believe me. Check the cameras. I shook my head and said, okay, bring the TV. We went back to the store and the guy was scared to death. I thought he was going to cry at some point. We didn't have night security because the store closed for the night, and we didn't need a night crew in the store. We had cameras everywhere and only one place to turn them off. Only the managers had the key to that room. The camera was pointed at the door to the room, but it was above the doorway to the stairwell. I had mentioned this to security several years ago, but they never corrected the situation. So I easily opened the door to the stairwell, walked over and covered the camera with a piece of black duct tape. Then I turned off the security camera system. Well, technically I turned off the computer that controlled the system. When I brought him into the room and he saw that the computer wasn't working, he panicked and kept harping on about his innocence while I called the police, per the rules. When all was said and done, the guy was found guilty of a misdemeanor and got no jail time. I was hoping he'd get a couple months, but that wasn't expensive enough for TV. He had to do a bunch of community service and pay a fine, which surprisingly was more than I paid for the TV. With a felony on his record, he would also have a hard time finding a retail job. That made me happy, but still not worth the risk I took. True, the corporation had improved security by installing cameras in the parking lot. They should have been installed a long time ago. He was stupid enough to never realize that I did it. He tried to accuse the team of setting him up, but he couldn't prove anything. They didn't miss him when I fired him. On a brisk Saturday morning, a week after dinner with Missy, I saw her waiting in the car to warm up. When I parked next to her, she met me at the door and greeted me with a kiss. Are we still on for dinner tonight? She asked. Sure. Good. I have something special I'm cooking for us. You won't want to miss it. I wouldn't. Is it that tramp? Katie asked from behind me, interrupting me. Excuse me? Missy shouted, fully exposing her claws. Katie, what do you want? I asked, getting annoyed. I've been trying to call you. Did you block my number? Yes. After your 30 messages about how I'm a bastard for carrying on, I've had enough. What do you want? I want to talk about girls. We need to settle the college issue. They can go wherever they want. I've taken care of the money for them. I'd like to get involved, but ever since you sicked them on me, they won't talk to me. They're afraid you won't pay for the school. Of course I'll pay for it. I still love them, even though because you can't keep your legs shut, I lost them in the divorce. Missy laughed. Kathy looked at her and said, It's not my fault you couldn't forgive me for one misstep. Huh? One misstep? It was only one time because you didn't hold back. I dealt with you right away. It doesn't matter. You're still supposed to be my husband. We're still supposed to be a family. You're delusional. You cost me my marriage, my family, my daughters, and my mother. I swear you better never date a man if I find out about this. You'll never see a second date. No one wants to date a cheating whore, unless they know about your reputation and are looking for some easy entertainment. I turned and walked toward the store. I heard shouting behind me, and when I turned around, I saw Missy pinning Katie against the car and poking her in the face with her finger. Stay away from my man, bitch. You threw him out and I picked him up. I ran up and pulled her away. Stop it, Missy. She's not worth this kind of trouble. You heard me, bitch. Katie shouted and turned and walked toward the store. Please go away, Kathy. We broke up and it's your fault. Yours and yours alone. I left her sobbing by the car. I caught up to my panting Missy and took her hand. She looked up and smiled at me, slowing her step. I'm sorry, Bill. I guess I was too territorial. Oh no, I like it when women fight over me in the parking lot. It's really good for my ego. We laughed and went inside to take care of business. Later that morning, my mom called me. When I answered, she mumbled, Billy, She didn't finish, and I heard a knock, but the call didn't end. I hung up and called back, but no one answered. I called 911 to have an ambulance sent to her, but was told the call had already come from her house. I feared the worst and asked Anne to cover for me since I needed to go. She understood, and as I ran through the store, I ran into Missy, who yelled after me. I ignored her and ran straight to my car. When I got to my mom's house, the ambulance was already pulling away and I followed. When I got to the back doors, I found that she was gone before the ambulance even pulled up to the hospital. She must have passed out while we were on the phone. I cried as I sat in the lobby of the emergency room. I sat there alone and thought about the last thing my mom had said to me. What had she meant to say? Maybe it was, Am I in trouble? Am I having a heart attack? I'm really sorry? The phone rang and it was Missy. Hi, my mom just died. Oh, Bill, I'm so sorry. Yes, thank you. I'm afraid I won't be good company tonight. No, I'll be with you. If you need me, please let me come. Okay, yes, I said. I didn't feel like being alone, and I was glad she agreed to be with me. I'm on my way home now. I'll meet you there when you get out. Okay, I'll see you soon. I ended the conversation and went to my car. Instead of driving home, I drove to my old house. I needed to tell my girls if they wanted to see me or not. As I pulled up to the house, I saw both girls' cars in the driveway and sighed. I had no idea that the first words we would say to each other would turn out to be such news. Ignoring the fact that I didn't live here anymore, I entered the code into the garage door that opened and stepped inside. Katie's car wasn't there, and I was glad for that. I don't think I was in any condition to see her. The living room and kitchen were empty, so I went upstairs to the bedrooms. Daddy! Shouted Jill when I walked into her room. What do you want? Shouted Jenny, coming in after me. Did you come to beg? Well, you can go. Grandma had a heart attack and died this morning, I said, interrupting her. They both gasped. I just thought I should tell you this in person. Now I'm going to hell. I walked out and closed the door behind me. I heard Jenny yelling for me to wait, but I ran to my car and left. I headed towards the little lake where I spent so many happy times with the girls. It was too cold for boats, but the water was starting to thaw and was very calm. I sat down on the picnic bench and cried again. This time I cried not only for my mother, but also for the loss of my daughters. The fury in Jenny's voice told me that I wasn't needed in her life. She didn't need to tell me to go to hell. Her tone said it all for her. I wondered if I'd made a mistake along the way. Not with Katie, but with the girls. What had I done so wrong that made them hate me so much? Katie was the one who ruined our marriage. Why couldn't my daughters understand that? I don't know how long I sat like that, but I heard someone approach. I turned around. It was Kathy and the girls. How did you find me here? I asked, turning around to look at the lake again. You didn't turn off the synchronization of our Find My Phone app, Katie said. Bill, I'm sorry about your mom. Yeah? I spat. Are you sorry that she's dead or that you turned her against me and she died without ever making up? She was silent. Leave me alone. I can't deal with your shit right now, I continued. I'll never forgive you for what you did to me. Our last words were her saying that she wouldn't talk to me again until I came to my senses and refused the divorce. She didn't even say she loved me when she hung up on me. I'm so sorry, Bill, for everything. I heard her walk away and Jenny said, Daddy, we're sorry too. Please forgive us for being bitches. I turned around and they both rushed over to me to hug me. We cried in each other's arms for what seemed like an eternity. It's not my fault, girls. Why can't you realize that what your mother did is the reason we're no longer together? We're sorry, Daddy, Jill said. We just thought you should forgive her. She loves you. It's so obvious. Not enough to be faithful to me, Jill. I'm sorry, girls. I'm so sorry. We cuddled some more while Kathy watched us from the warm car. Girls, I need you so much. You'll be leaving for college soon and I'm going to miss you. We're losing so much time. We understand, Daddy, Jenny said. We won't shut you out anymore, Jill added. I wish your grandmother had the opportunity to do the same. Daddy, can we come with you? We haven't seen your new house yet. Maybe we could get some pizza. Sure, tell Mommy, and let's go. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw Missy's car. I'd forgotten she was coming. Girls, it looks like you're going to meet Missy. Is she your girlfriend? They asked in unison, making me laugh. Yeah, well, we just started dating. Look how he's blushing, Jenny. It's so cute. And they jumped out of the car and were at Missy's door in no time. They peppered her with questions, and I could see that Missy didn't understand what was going on. Girls, leave her alone. Show her inside, and I'll introduce you all. They kissed me on the cheek and disappeared into the garage, and I walked over to a shocked Missy. Sorry about that, I said as she opened the door. She smiled radiantly and kissed my cheek. Your daughters? Come on, you'll be formally introduced. I wish I knew, dear. I must look terrible. I laughed and said, You're fine. They'll like you. Jenny, Jill, I want you to meet Missy. They hugged. Jenny, cheeky as usual, declared, You're super pretty. Jill jumped up and said, Good for you, Daddy. Missy laughed, and I was too shocked to say anything. Hey, let's take a quick look around the house, and then I need to take care of some things for Grandma's services. Bill, I'll order some pizzas while you look around. That sounds good, honey. You're reading my mind. Oh. The girls cooed. I shook my head and Missy smiled. I decided that I would wait until the next morning to call and let my mom know. I would write an obituary for the paper on Monday and post the details of the service on Facebook after visiting the funeral home on Sunday. After dinner, we sat and spent hours telling Missy stories about my mom. My girls, not so innocently, added a few embarrassing stories about me to keep Missy more interested. It wasn't my fault the pier was wet and I fell into the lake, I swear. Before I knew it, it was 10 o'clock. Girls, time is slipping away from me and it's getting late. They frowned and asked, Can we stay the night? I don't have beds for the guest rooms yet. Tell you what, I'll pick you up in the morning and we'll go out for breakfast, okay? If you don't mind, I could use some help sorting through Grandma's stuff too. Sure, Dad. We'll help with whatever you need. Thanks, Missy. Do you want to go for a ride? Or do you need to go home to Mia? She's staying with my parents. Jill jumped up. Who's Mia? Mia is my 4-year-old daughter. They both squealed and Jenny said, Oh my God, I can't wait to meet her. Missy laughed at their excitement and replied, Someday soon, I promise. Okay, let's go. They're great girls, Missy said as we sat on the couch shortly after returning to my house. I'm glad you were able to get back together with them. I sighed. I am too. Just wish my mom didn't have to die to do it. She snuggled into my arms and I fell asleep with my arms around her. When I woke up in the morning, she had a blanket covering us and was still snuggled up against me. I missed being so close to someone. I kissed the top of her head and said, "I'm sorry I fell asleep on you." "Hmm," she moaned, stretching. "It's okay, baby. You've had a very emotional day. Sam, would you like to join me and the girls for breakfast?" "Only if I can bring Mia with me. My parents have plans this morning." "Sure. My daughters will love her." Since we needed to pick up Mia, I asked my daughters to meet us at IHOP. When I walked in holding Mia's hand, my girls rushed over to her. Within seconds, they had Mia in their arms, spun her in the air, and then began tickling her and showering her with kisses. As they did so, she squealed and giggled with a huge grin, to the point of screaming, "I have to go to the bathroom." The girls said in unison, "We'll carry her," and rushed to the bathroom. "I don't know, Missy. Do you think they'll get along?" I asked with a smirk. I asked with a smirk. Asked with a smirk. She playfully patted my shoulder and kissed my cheek. "I hope they'll be together for years to come," she said. She was thinking pretty long term, and technically we only had one date. It was a little unnerving, but I was sure I could handle the feeling. As we ate, Mia and my daughters chatted nonstop about everything in the world. I could tell in my eyes that Mia loved to talk, and not just about herself. She asked so many questions about my daughters' lives that I think even my girls were surprised. My daughters worked as nannies for neighbors, so interacting with young children was their forte. They knew all the hot kids shows and movies, and Mia ate out of the palm of their hand. They also got along great with Missy. They showed no hostility or anger when they met her, which really surprised me. They refused to socialize with me for months after my divorce. But as soon as they met my new girlfriend, they immediately became best friends. I didn't understand it, and I would have to try to get some explanation from the girls. After dozens of phone calls, starting the long process of cleaning my mom's house, and a visit to the funeral home, I was finally able to sit down and relax. The girls came back to my house for dinner, and Missy and Mia went their separate ways after breakfast. Missy decided it would be too emotional for us, and wanted to avoid the discomfort of Mia asking questions about everything while we sorted things out at my mom's house. "Daddy, are you in love with Missy?" Jenny asked unexpectedly. "We've only seen each other a couple times outside of work. It's a little early to call it love." "Okay, Daddy," Jill said as if I were an idiot. "Have you seen the good old cartoons where the girls' eyes open and they press their palms to their cheeks as they look at their prince?" I nodded, taking a bite of my pizza slice. "So she practically has hearts spinning in her head as she looks at you and claps her eyes," Jill said. Before I could deny that she liked me, they looked at each other, turned to me, and said, "We like her." From joy that I would get to see my daughters, I went from joy to anger. I threw my piece on my plate, wiped my hands, and went to the sink. Leaning on the counter facing them, I tried to calm down. "Dad?" Jenny asked. "Girls, how can you break my heart all this time and now sit there and tell me you like my girlfriend? What have I done to you that you think it's okay to shut me out? To ignore me? Telling me to go to hell when I see you for the first time in my life? What did I do? Do you know how many times I cried leaving you a message I knew you wouldn't want to receive? Mom made us." "What?" I exclaimed. Jill replied, "It all started when Mom told us that if you thought you were losing us, come back to her and we'd be a family again. We're sorry." I turned around and Jenny jumped up to hug me, seeing a tear on my cheek. "Daddy, we're so sorry. After it didn't work out, she told us that you left us and weren't going to pay for college because we wanted you to stay with her. She told us that the messages you were leaving were just a ploy you used in the divorce to make it seem like you were a good guy to please the judge." "And you believed that?" "Dad, how would you react if you sat with her day after day and heard her defend her one-time mistake against 20 years of love? We thought you were being unreasonable." "And I was? Would you let your boyfriend cheat on you?" I didn't have an answer. "Where does the line go?" I asked firmly. "Once, two, five, answer me." They began to cry and we hugged each other. Their hugs immediately calmed me, and I felt awful. "I'm so sorry, girls. I missed you guys so much." After each of them expressed their love for me, I said, "It's time to bring you home. You have school tomorrow. Don't forget to ask your mom to tell them about the wake and funeral. You're going to need some free time this week." We hugged one more time and I watched with warmth in my heart as they drove away. I looked up at the sky and said, "You didn't have to go to bring the girls back to me, Mom, but thank you. I'll miss you." Wakes are hard for me because I always felt uncomfortable sitting in a room with a dead body. My mom's wake was especially hard. Throughout the day, I walked over to the casket several times and looked at her. She looked peaceful. I was glad she would get to see my dad again. He had died a few years before from cancer. He wanted the funeral to be different, without a wake. He, like me, thought it was strange that people were interacting with a corpse. Mom had it all figured out. I guess as you get older, you start to think about things like that. She even picked out the coffin. All I had to do was set the time and day and take care of the small details, like arranging the room and the service. I was glad she had done that. And I was standing at the front of the room talking to one of her friends when Katie and my girls walked in. My daughters greeted me with warm, tear-filled hugs, and Kathy thankfully left me alone. After saying a prayer, Kathy put something in the casket and retreated to the back of the room, where she sat down alone. I looked to see what she had put there and saw that it was a picture of Kathy and me in an embrace with my mom. She was holding each of our babies in her arms and a smile a mile wide shone on her face. I picked up the photo she had set aside and reverently placed it next to her hands. It was the first time I cried that day. Later, the priest wanted to start the prayer service. Kathy never left her seat at the end of the hall. She drew everyone to her. You can't be a family member for as long as she was and not recognize people, and they all loved her. The protocol was for the immediate family to sit in the front row of chairs. My girls sat on my right and Misty on my left, but that felt wrong somehow. I stood up and turned around. I saw Katie, who was still standing in the back of the room wiping tears from her eyes. This didn't seem right to me. My mom wouldn't have wanted this. Katie was as much a daughter to her as she was a wife to me. I headed to the back of the auditorium. As everyone sat waiting for the service to begin, I was noticed and all eyes were on me. I held out my hand to Kathy. "Come to the front, you don't need to hide in here." She started sobbing and wrapped her arms around me. Letting go of me, she whispered, "Thank you." Now, we walked to the front of the auditorium and my Uncle John gave her his seat, which was next to my daughter. "You're a good man, Bill," Missy whispered, kissing my cheek. It was the strangest feeling of my life to hold Missy's hand when my ex-wife was only a few feet away from me. I prayed that I wouldn't regret it later and have a problem with them. As we were wrapping up the day, I was already saying goodbye to the last of the visitors when Kathy came up to me. With Missy by my side, I wondered how Kathy would behave. I hoped she wouldn't start a fight out of respect from my mother. "Bill, thank you for inviting me into the family today. It means more than you can imagine. She loved you like a daughter, and it was the right thing to do. Oh, that reminds me. If you want, you can ride in the limo tomorrow with us and the girls." She hugged me and cried. I felt Missy's hand touch my lower back imperiously, and I began to fear that a fight was about to break out. "Well," Katie said, breaking the hug, "if you don't want anything from me, I'll go home." I shook my head in refusal, and she smiled briefly at Missy. "I'm glad you're here for him. You may not know it, but he's been a mama's boy. It's going to be really hard on him soon that she's gone." With those words, she turned and walked out of the room. Missy put her arm around my shoulders and said, "Let's get you home." I threw my keys in my locker and went into the kitchen, glad the day was over. Missy sat down at the table and accepted a cold beer from me. "I think the relationship with Kathy went better than you expected. You handled it well," she said, as I enjoyed a cold Sam Adams. "Yeah, I'm glad I handled it. I was really expecting her to start something with you." "Well, I'm sure the girls helped with that. We just need to get through tomorrow and everything will be fine." I hoped she was right. I don't know why I had a bad feeling that Katie wouldn't be able to handle Missy. I guess I'm just paranoid. "Will you stay the night with me?" I asked. She smiled and took my hand. "You couldn't kick me out even if you tried." We didn't make love, but she snuggled up against me, and it was the best sleep I'd had since the divorce. "You watch me like a hawk. I'm not going to abuse your gift and pick a fight," Katie said as we waited for prayer to begin. "I know that," I lied. "It just makes me uncomfortable." She snorted and asked, "How do you think it makes me feel? I'm an outcast here, a whore." I frowned. "No one thinks that about you, especially not today." "I'm truly sorry, Bill. I wish this had never happened. I wish..." She cried and hurried to the bathroom. It's hard for all of us, Bill, my mother's friend Jean said, patting me on the shoulder. Your mom was a wonderful woman, and we'll all miss her. I kissed her on the cheek and thanked her, glad that Kathy had sheltered my mom from tears. After the funeral, we sat down at a table at my mom's favorite Polish restaurant. The room was full, and Kathy looked awkward as she searched for an empty seat. I approached her again and led her by the hand to the table where Missy and my daughters and I were seated. Katie, we will always be a family, no matter the divorce. No matter where we sit, you will always be welcome. A tear rolled down her cheek as she sat down at the table and thanked me. I don't know when I got over it, but it felt like I had finally forgotten the pain she had caused. Life went on. The girls went to college and Skype with me every week. Missy and I are still together, and I am very close to popping the question. Katie and I communicate infrequently, but cordially. She, too, continues to live her life dating the divorced father of a friend of one of the girls. He's a nice guy. I hope things work out for them. Some will say I should have forgiven her for that one-time slip-up, but I just can't do that. I may be a bad guy in someone's mind, but I can live with myself. The end. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.